Thank you very much for inviting me to chair this very important session, The World in Disarray Higher Education 2030. And I'm very happy to be in the august company of such eminent speakers, Mr. Suresh, Mr. Gupta, Professor Suresh, Professor Gupta, and Professor Kamlesh, who will be joining us shortly. I would also like to acknowledge my dear friend, Dr. Rajan Saxena, the former Vice Chancellor of Narsi Monji, because of whom I'm here. And Rajan, if you're listening to me, you have to just tell me to be at any session and I'll leave everything aside and, be there. So it's great to be at IMA. Management education is one of the most popular education, at least in India, and I'm sure world across. But typically, when we look at students who want to pursue their careers, I think the goal is to work for the corporate world and join some business school. Earlier on, it used to be postgraduate management, which was more popular. But now in India, you see that undergraduate management programs like the BBA, the Bachelor's in Business Administration, or Bachelor's in Management Studies are equally popular programs for students to pursue. So with these few words, I welcome my wonderful panel, and just a little bit from my side on this, the theme of this session. I think it's an excellent theme because all of us as academia are facing this state of disarray or confusion. As academia, we really don't know what we are preparing our students for, what kind of jobs are we really making them ready for, and what is it that we need to teach so that we prepare them not just for jobs but even entrepreneurial ventures. And when I personally look at education or the role of a university, I think it's much more than just imparting the skills to these youngsters to become employable. Of course, in a country like India, employability is most important, but I think the role of university is far beyond just creating jobs for these youngsters. It's more important for us to create individuals with better characters and those who can be sensitive to the society. And with the pandemic, we all have seen that the way globally things happened, the state of people, the mindset of people, and of course more importantly the uncertainty that all of us have faced and will continue to face for several years from now. And therefore, I think when we prepare our students, we have to prepare them to be resilient to this uncertain world, also prepare them to be sensitive to the needs of the society and the community, also make them sensitive to the environment, because health and environment now play a much larger role than what we ever thought as academia. And lastly, look at other social needs of the community like poverty, etc. And therefore, I think for us as academia, how do you prepare these young men and women to a world of disarray, to a world which even we are not aware of? And that is where I think those character building comes to the prime importance of what we teach and how we teach. It is also important for us to train our young faculty members to this kind of teaching, which they have never done. Up till now, faculty members were more involved in teaching or imparting the skills for employability, which moved on to entrepreneurship. But now we have to train our faculty towards skills like critical thinking, collaboration, etc. And it is very difficult, to impart these skills to the faculty so that we can impart these skills to our students. Now, many a times I feel that when we talk about out of the box thinking, it is only in the context of students. How many times really we interact with our faculty to think out of the box so as to find innovative solutions, to societal problems. Again, a country like India can provide enormous opportunities for both students and faculty, and especially to meet up with the demands of this uncertain world. India, I always say, is like a laboratory. And for our international friends who have joined here, and I'm glad that we have international Indian friends who are going to speak, and they will speak more than what I would like to. But certainly I see a lot of foreign universities now wanting to collaborate with Indian universities, to collaborate with Indian academia, simply because they know that they can actually work in an environment which has problems which through research they can find solutions to. And therefore very strong collaborations that are happening now. Many governments coming forward I recently was with the Australian government and in a delegation, and I saw the kind of kind of interest that Australia is taking in the Indian higher education system, and likewise we see so many others. I think the national education policy that was rolled out in 2020 has really given all of us a great impetus, not just in transforming the Indian higher education system, but looking at how can we create individuals for the globalized world. How can we bring in those Indian knowledge systems and create individuals with very, very strong values, with very strong characters, but still make them global citizens? And I think against this backdrop, we have wonderful speakers on this panel, and we are here to listen to them. And therefore, I would invite each one of them, and I would introduce each one of them before I invite them. And may I invite Dr. Vipin Gupta. We all know about him, but just a little introduction. Dr. Vipin Gupta, who is a PhD from Wharton, is a professor of management and co-director of the Center for Global Management at the Jack H. Brown College of Business and Public Administration of the California State University. He has been featured as a businessman in the news by Business India for this project. We all know that he is an eminent researcher, has authored several books, and his articles have appeared in some of the top journals. So Dr. Vipin Gupta, may I request you to address this panel on this wonderful topic.
Okay. So let me start by discussing some primary reason for global disruption. The primary reason is that the present that we have is a failed model of development. Why it is a failed model? Because based on two tenets of international discourse. First, giving credit to the West for their local development, that West has supernormal development, and giving discredit to the East for failing global development. So whenever Eastern countries have tried to develop, when Japan developed, there was a huge hue and cry internationally in the US and other countries that Japan is not abiding by the rules, and therefore it should give extra credit and make investments in the US and train Americans about the Japanese system. Same when China began growing, it's the same issue. When India begins growing, it's the same issue. So essentially, East is responsible for West not developing, and East is responsible for East not developing, but West is responsible for Western's supernatural development. Okay, so those are two tenets of the international development model. The secondary effect of this primary reason is the illusion that the past was a successful model of development, leading to unprecedented globalization that was bound to be disrupted when the West local development model became unsustainable. Right? West has data on the factors for its local development. It believes those factors are unique to West. They're a function of Western belief system. It advocates for a cultural shift for everyone to replicate its local model of development, that everybody should follow Western model. That's the successful model. East has remodeled its higher education to focus on subjects it believes are essential to engineering universal development. They include science, engineering, technology, and mathematics, because the data-driven West gives special privileges to the Eastern talent in these domains. We know that in STEM field, you can get kind of accelerated OPT, you can work for 3 years, and you can get jobs in the US and other countries in the West. The tertiary cause of this secondary effect is that while West offers incentives to the East to specialize in STEM, its education system is geared towards educating the local citizens in primarily humanities. A majority of the non-state private US universities are religiously affiliated, with active focus on interfaith dialogues. Many specialize in offering degrees only in divinity. In the East, religion is outside the domain of mainstream higher education. Citizens are educated to believe in the limitations of Eastern belief system and divinity of Western behavior system through cases, theories, and borrowed ideas. What's the quaternary development disrupting the status quo? There has been rapid rise of people from the East in the social, economic, and political domains in the West since the dawn of the IT era. It is challenge to the Western idea of Western supremacy rooted in Western belief system. Therefore, there is a shift in ideology that the Eastern people succeed in the West due to the Western cultural system. Unlike the belief, the culture is goal-oriented. There is a shared belief in the East and West that the Western culture system is futuristic and goal-oriented. The Eastern culture system is fatalistic and hierarchy-oriented. The Eastern people follow a hierarchy of beliefs and lack conviction about any of them. In fact, they have become indifferent to knowing if their personal hierarchy is real and makes a positive difference in their life. They just want to learn more so they can position new learning within their hierarchy. Let me give an example of the confused Eastern beliefs, the Hindu belief system. Hindus believe there is one God beyond all deities, Paradeity, Ishvara. God has infinite forms that make him infinite deity, encompassing all deities. That means primeval deity, the infinite deity, Maheshwara. Maheshwara is a Ishwar who transcends Ishwar. Okay, so it's a Maheshwar, Maha Ishwar. Another belief is each person is present as a form of God and can be seen as a present God. That means Parameshwar, Param deity. Okay, the goal of life is to become free from the present because the present is an illusion produced by the deity within us. Freedom makes us primordial to God because God gives primordiality to one who he blesses. Primordial means Uttam. Okay, so essentially that's a primordial deity. After freedom, we become primordial deity like Mother Nature. The core tenet of Hinduism is that Ishwar is equal to Maheshwar, which transcends Ishwar, is equal to present Ishwar, is equal to Uttam Ishwar, is equal to deity, which is Deva, is equal to Jiva, supra deity, is equal to Devi, which is supra deity, and equal to Bhagwan, which is supreme deity, and all of them are one. Okay, so that's the belief system. So what are the issues that put that world in disarray? The right question is, if everyone is one, and one is illusionary production, Maya, of zero, Indra, the devil, then why produce a goal in life? Okay, so you ask any person in India, I have no goal in life. Why not just consume whatever life has given by following the West, who have the PhD in consumerism, without producing anything worth consuming, without the Eastern involvement in their value system? So wrong answer. If West is extending a hand to involve the East, it is moral responsibility of the East to extend two hands. Only then the West will give credit to the East for yoga, organic and sustainability movements, among others. Reality check. The whole world has become credit collector, discredit distributor. Expecting to receive any credit for global citizenship is the biggest folly for which Ukraine is incurring irreparable, heavy cost. The big challenge is how to transform India's higher education system so that India does not end up repeating its past in the excitement of becoming a part of global without really knowing the local standi of her ancient wisdom in the global interfaith dialogues that are key to doing business like a local in the West, right? So, as I mentioned, a significant majority of private universities in the US focus on interfaith dialogues, and humanities is a big thing. Now, what's the solution for bringing order to transformation of higher education? We need to develop clarity about ancient wisdom of India to understand why India was a global leader until the modern times and why India lost her way due to idealism of aggregating knowledge from everywhere, seeking to satisfy everyone. Okay, that has led to this idea that everything is equal. All gods are same, Bhagwan, God, Ishwar, Maheshwar, Parameshwar, everybody is one. And everybody's illusion. Okay, so we need to make giving India her rightful place in our hearts the primary goal of transforming higher education. Only then we will radiate love for our nation and ensure natural strengthening of exchange rate. With fair terms of trade at par with the purchasing power parity, India will enjoy an accelerated growth and ensure well-being of each child locally and globally. And so these comments are based on the work which Dr. Vidya mentioned. So over the last year, I've worked on this 12-book project on looking at ancient Indian wisdom and modern science and developing an integration of that. So there are these 12 books, the most recent books, so first 8 were published last year. And this year I published What is Trading Factor, Mathematics Beyond Einstein, What is Cultural Factor, Biology Beyond Darwin, What is Exchange Factor, Physics Beyond Newton, and the last one, which is going to come in a couple of months, which is What is Technological Growth, Chemistry Beyond Boyle. And in this, I have used ancient Indian wisdom to show exactly what are the challenges in the interpretations and models and laws that some of the leading scientists in the US and internationally in the West have proposed. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
That was just fantastic. I think this is exactly what all of us as Indian academia here, and more specifically for me, where I spearhead the internationalization front here in India. This is exactly what I keep saying, that, we always try to emulate the West. Whenever we look at collaborations with foreign universities, Dr. Gupta, we always look at what is it that we can get as Indian universities from a foreign partner. Very little times that we realize that what is it that we can give to our foreign partners. And I think, when we look at collaborations, they have to be a win-win for both, and they have to be interdependent, they have to be symbiotic. And this is exactly what I think the national education policy also focuses on Indian knowledge systems and on, Indian, whatever that you have spoken. As a university that I represent, Symbiosis International University, our objective is exactly this. How do you bring in the whole concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, believing that the world is one family amongst each and every stakeholder, be it students, academia, and all others, in the university system. So thank you very much once again, and we'll come back to you with more questions. Let me move on to the next panelist, Professor Nallan Suresh. He is the UB Distinguished Professor, Department of Operations Management and Strategy in the School of Management, State University of New York, Buffalo, New York, USA. He's also the Associate Director of the Stephen Still Institute for Sustainable Transportation and Logistics at the university. Very interesting. Dr. Suresh specializes in supply chain management, manufacturing, global logistics, and international trade. I'm sure Dr. Suresh will bring in his perspective and views to this discussion. Over to you.
Good morning to everyone. It's a great honor for me to be here. A special best wishes to Mr. Shivakumar, Dr. Yeravdekar, and that interesting talk by Professor Vipin Gupta and other distinguished panelists. Thanks to IMA. I'm honored to participate in this session. So when I first saw the theme for this session, a world in disarray and higher education in 2030, that really got me thinking how, in a world in which we live in a world of unknowns, and how are we going to project 10 years ahead was a big challenge. And I thought I would, so I took a piece of paper and wrote down many things that came to my mind. And then I categorized them under 3 categories. I'm sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint file, I'll just speak. So I put down my thoughts under 3 categories. One is all the technological developments that are taking place in higher ed today. And then the second stream is all the new teaching paradigms that we are now experimenting with. And thirdly, what are the ultimate societal goals of higher education institutions and so on. So these are the 3 themes I thought I could speak about briefly. First, on the technology side, there is something that can be easily forecasted. One thing is 10 years down the line, our Zoom experience is going to look very, very primitive. And we are going to, this whole medium that we have now become very familiar with, thanks to COVID, we suddenly became very digitally proficient, all universities. And I guess necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And so, but 10 years down the line, this type of Zoom experience is going to look very, very primitive, because there are developments in virtual reality, and it will be much more immersive experience. It will look as if we are actually physically in a room. It will be much more engaging, and the much more bandwidth, the internet bandwidth, etc., and the students will actually feel genuinely connected with their peers. It will be like a real classroom. The technology is going to, you're going to go to a higher level in terms of technology. And the technology will also establish universities to establish stronger connection with the industries. It's be much more seamless integration of our graduating students seamlessly proceeding to industry, because we'll be much more connected better with industries. And right now, for example, we have a lot of virtual internships taking place. Students are actually working in companies through the web, and they were confined to their homes during the COVID, but we have this whole virtual internships. In fact, we have started working with PhD students from other countries on the web. So we have these virtual internships and virtual interactions. It'll be taken to another level. And this technology will also reduce the administrative costs of running the universities, and that will make higher education more affordable and accessible to a vast majority of the population. And also, thanks to technology, smaller universities can share resources. Smaller universities can jointly have a university's library system, and community engagement systems, and so on. All that will be made possible by technology. This technology is also bringing many non-university players in this field who are going to compete with the universities. So I guess universities also have to brace themselves for severe competition from non-university players in the education field, people like Coursera and all the other people, and so on. So this technology is going to completely change our landscape, and the better we are able to anticipate the future and adapt, the better we are going to be, and so on. So those are all thoughts that occur to me on the technology side. Now, coming to the teaching paradigms, even before education, even before COVID came along, we were experimenting with many teaching innovations like the flipped classroom and other models wherein the students are much better engaged, much more deeply engaged than the traditional classroom. But even the flipped classroom goes back to the 1980s. We had this Russian person, Militsa Neshkina was her name. Way back in the 1980s, she came up with the idea of the flipped classroom. We don't have sufficient research to see how well these flipped classrooms are working. We still don't have much research results on the quality of education that flipped classrooms provide. But whatever it is, we are actively engaging in these new teaching paradigms wherein students learn much more actively on a day-to-day basis, instead of cramming all this knowledge a month before the final exam, and so on. And we will also come up with new teaching paradigms which gives the students the flexibility of in-class experience, at the same time the convenience and the flexibility of offline experiences, so etc. And there will be a lot more need for non-degree certificate programs, micro-credential programs, global virtual internship experiences, doctoral dissertations done with overseas advisors, and so forth. So many new teaching paradigms are going to evolve, and we don't know what will be the best, but I'm quite sure we are going to be in for a period of a great deal of innovation. And finally, on the societal side, ultimately our goal, as Dr. Yeravdekar put it, is not just the education, but it must also be values-based and character-based. That's also an integral part of education. Universities must become very affordable. They must become very accessible. At the same time, universities must also impart good values on our younger citizens. And ultimately, the goal should be to become a world-class higher education power. Now, India has a long tradition of intellectual discourse and debates. Way back, we had the Nallan University thousands of years ago. We had scholars from China and Korea and other countries visiting us. In the same way, India can really take things to the next level, and India can become a knowledge center of the world with many, many foreign people seeking to come to India and study here. And we also have to capitalize on all the good things from the past, as Professor Vipin Gupta put it. So we must build on the foundation of the great Indian heritage that we have, and hopefully we'll have a world-class higher education system. We must also strive to become very proficient in research. We must adopt the journal rankings of leading countries in the world. I've seen that happen in China during the last 20 years. I've been going there. I've been going to China almost every year. I've seen Chinese adopting the international standards, making sure that their faculty publish in the best journals of the world. And that's something we need to do as well. We need to benchmark and constantly take it to the next level. Those are some of the thoughts. Thank you very much for letting me share them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suresh. And it's rather unfortunate that we couldn't have Dr. Kamlesh joining in, I guess, because of some technical reason. So I will have to continue this conversation with both of you. Dr. Vipin Gupta, you very rightly put, your thoughts on, and the whole focus was, I believe, on the Indian knowledge systems, and how in India as academia we also should, our heart should be full of pride that whatever we were in the past, and we've kind of copied a lot of things, Western things down the way, and how can we bring back what we have lost? But as educationists, sometimes it is difficult to get what we believe we should get into the academic instruction. Let me give you an example. As I said, the motto of our university is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and we decided to start a 2-credit course on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and give it to all students, because we believe that this is something that they must learn. But to bring in the learning of an ideological concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was pretty difficult. It wasn't easy. It took months for us to, research on and deliberate and get experts. And now, of course, it's a nice 2-credit course. So can you just highlight, while you've written several books, 12 books on various facets of Indian knowledge systems, but can you just highlight a little bit to our academic, friends, the teachers more specifically, how would they bring, this Indian knowledge system into the academic curriculum and, also impart it to us?
Right. So very good question, and I commend you for making all these efforts at Symbiosis and other places. One of the biggest challenge is to have a clarity on what Indian knowledge system is, and that's one of the biggest fatalities of various kind of developments which have occurred in India over a period of time, and which include essentially translations by different languages by different people with different motivations. We know that when people are copying materials, there are motives associated with it, and so there are political kind of motives, there are other kind of motives, and so as a result, what has happened is that the basic understanding of what those terms are has completely been lost. So I just gave an example of, India has kind of this beauty of distinguishing between different forms of, for instance, deities, right? But what are the meanings of these deities? What are the functions of those deities? Nobody has that clarity. So everybody thinks that everybody does everything. So the potential of everything is in everything. And so we need to have a research-oriented approach to Indian knowledge system. And that's where higher education comes in, that we need to involve our students, we need to involve different experts. So people should not go with a set notion. The problem with anything which is related with, if we convert that into Hinduism, because really the Hinduism is all the knowledge system of India. So that has been defined as Hinduism. So once we put a religious angle to it, then people become it becomes dogmatic, and people become defensive, and they try to justify what's there. Instead of trying to understand that if they were like different classes, what those classes mean. What is the meaning of Brahmin? What's the meaning of Shudra? What's the meaning of... So unless we know and have that clarity, it's going to be very difficult for us, because we are not going to be convinced when other people say, for instance, that you have a caste system and that creates problems. It makes us less than a whole. It creates that something is missing in us, because the society that we live in, the knowledge system that we have, it seems not to stand up on the international kind of discourse. So unless we have absolute clarity on what those things are and what's the meaning of those, we cannot fix the social issues which are emerged because of confusion about those elements. So if somebody says, this is Brahmin, do you really know what is the meaning of Brahmin? Are you really a Brahmin? So if somebody says, you are Shudra, do you know what's the meaning of Shudra? The meaning of Shudra is a worker factor. A deity is a worker, a deity is a Shudra, a Dev is also Shudra. So, and a Brahmin, whatever work has been done by a worker, a Brahmin is a knower. So like a manager knows, so a tailor goes and studies what workers are doing, and flatted tailor now becomes the king and the expert because he has learned everything from the worker. If the worker has not taught him what the workers knew, then the knower would not make more money than the worker. So we really need to have that clarity, and once we have this clarity, then we'll be able to solve the issues that science has not been able to solve. And that's what I show in my work, that we have, because we fear that religion and the knowledge system that we have in the past, that's of no value. If we do that, we become like isolated in the international community. But in international community, that's what is the mainstream work. And that's what I showed you. Essentially 1,000 universities in the US, a majority of the private universities in the US are religious affiliated. And that's what they study.
Absolutely. I think what you said, it is so true. And I also propose that such teachings should start from the school level. I mean, now that, what do we really teach our children in the schools again? Again, it is a whole lot of focus on STEM disciplines, on competition, on, again, producing a workforce that can, provide service-oriented work to, to the corporate world. So things need to change. And I come back to teacher training as one of the most important aspects of, whatever transformation that we are going through in the Indian higher education system. I will come back to Dr. Suresh. I think there is a direct question to you because you did speak about technological development. And here there is a question from the audience, where they say that there are some organizations that do not accept, education through e-learning platforms or through distance education. Now, while on one side we know that, for the last 2 years, we've only gone through online education, and there has been a change even in the industry and their perspective of accepting students who have undergone an online education. I mean, I know at least in our university, 2 whole years of MBA education online, and still the industry accepts them as if they came from an offline or a face-to-face education. That has been a change. But if you look at it from the past, typically online degrees, online education are something that are kind of not looked at with great respect. So what do you think, will be the future?
Yeah, that's a good question by Mr. Farhad. See, historically, we used to have correspondence courses and nobody used to respect people who are taking correspondence courses. Now, people who have online degrees, we tend to view them still as something like correspondence course graduates. And so, but down the line, this is a transitional problem. It will take some time for legitimacy to occur for online education degrees. It will take some time to acquire legitimacy. But I think 10 years down the line, it will become so normal. The online education will become so normal that it will be accepted down the line. But we do have to make sure through research that online education quality is as good as in-person class education. And I'm a strong believer in in-class. I personally strongly believe that in-person education leads to much better student quality than online education. But thanks to the developments in online education, I think the quality of online graduates will be on par down the line. Right now, it may not be so. I'm speaking without evidence. I've not seen any research that backs this up. I'm just saying this out of my intuition. I suspect but down the line, thanks to technological developments, we are going to make sure that the quality of education offered through online education will be on par with in-person classrooms, and slowly industry will definitely start to accept it. That because that will be the new reality. It's just a transitional problem that we are having that it's not fully accepted yet, but I think within a few years it will become quite legitimate. And I think we're seeing that graduates of Coursera and all these education, it's well accepted by industry now. Thank you for the good question.
Yes, I kind of agree with you that, though face-to-face education, as all of us, like to see the reactions of students right there in front of your eyes. And earlier on, I remember when we were hit by this pandemic and moved on to online, totally 100% online, teachers were just, it was so difficult for them to not just adapt to technology and delivering education through technology, but I think it was difficult for them to even adapt to the fact that they really can't see the students as what they would see in a normal classroom and, listen to their reactions, and those kind of, behavioral things that were far more important to them than really the use of technology. But yes, I think things are changing now. With the last 2 years, as I said, industry has also started accepting students who have undergone a full 100% online education with the same kind of acceptance that they would have otherwise. And now we are slowly moving on from online to a hybrid or a blended model. And I think that will be the most beautiful model. At least I personally feel that there is so much that we can offer in a blended model where, students can learn at their pace. Faculty can deliver at their pace, and while they would see the students in the classrooms, there is a lot at the back end that they can really provide them with, the kind of information that they can provide with, which we didn't see it earlier happening. So I think faculty have become far more confident, and I must really, on this public platform, really appreciate the efforts taken by faculty across the globe, and more specifically in India, where ICT was not such a tool, at least in some of the universities, and people were not used to using technology so much. The way they adapted to technology, the way they delivered, and I think the most difficult part was assessments and evaluation. And they carried out those also so beautifully well. So we must really applaud the efforts of the faculty members. And I'll come back to you, Dr. Suresh, but a question to, again, Dr. Gupta, which has come from the audience is that is it that we really will be able to provide in quotes education for all in true terms, or will it just remain a missionary goal?
Yes. You talked about that in terms of the school system and the changes which are needed in the school system. But one of the things that I still remember kind of growing up, that Doordarshan had the school TV, right, where they used to give all the kind of sessions for the school students, and still kind of through TV. I know kind of one of my batchmates from Ahmedabad. He is IAS officer in Northeast, one of the states, and so throughout the state of Assam, kind of, what they did was they used TV to get during the pandemic to all the students, and that created a universal education because even in the villages, television is easily accessible even when internet is not. So really, what is needed is a higher education system to take leadership, because this online education, for instance, provides an interesting opportunity for the best minds in India and of course internationally to come together to put together a series of curated kind of programs which are then reviewed and localized and customized by different faculty in the way they want. But this material can be available at a fairly low cost or zero cost if supported by sort of some wealthy individuals or by the government of India or collectively by different institutions. And that essentially that provides a minimum base of resources so that people don't spend money on international textbooks, on international authors, and increasingly, for instance, for me, in the last 10 years, I have not asked my students to purchase even a single textbook, because all the materials are now kind of, it can be recorded, they can be shared, they can provide it kind of free of cost. So this idea of charging money for knowledge and then making lifetime kind of huge increasing returns using the business terms that, okay, kind of, we are showing how we make increasing returns by creating one fixed cost investment. Okay, so at the cost of a majority of people who are in emerging markets can't even afford education. So let them take huge loans because we want to make huge money and want to show everybody that we can make money using this model. So we need to essentially falsify that model and take leadership, and that universal education for all can happen within a period of 1 year if we are all committed.
I agree, and I think the government of India is also, taking a lot of efforts in providing, as you very rightly said, that during our childhood times that we did watch, some of the lessons on television. Now they're using almost 200 channels to impart education. Of course, the mindset of Indian people to move on from television providing entertainment only to television providing education now, that still has to change, but I'm sure it will. And I think in rural India, that is the best medium that you can really provide education for, because we run a school in rural India, and we realize that while we would love to provide education the way we provide to schools here in Pune city, it's very difficult because, how many families really have smartphones, how much of the network is available to students. So I think television is something that can provide one of the best ways, at least at the school level. Coming back to Dr. Suresh, you spoke about research, and something that all of us in India are, kind of challenged with as university administrators. When we look at rankings, whether it's the National Institutional Ranking Framework here in India or the QS or THE, the collective research output of faculty is finally what is going to, move the university up the ladder in the rankings. So how do you think China has done? You said you visited China and you do visit China pretty often. I've written a paper, I've published a paper on what India can learn from China in higher education. But this is a question that intrigues us, that while, China is not so well versed with the English language, whereas Indians, even in rural India, are so well versed with, why does, the number of publications still remain lower in India as against China?
Yeah, that's in fact, I look forward to appreciate if you could. I would love to read that paper that you said you've written, the Chinese experience. I would appreciate it. Yes, so basically, at least in my experiences in the management school, since I work for a business school, what I've seen in the Chinese schools is the journal rankings which we use in the US, like UT Dallas rankings, for example, the Chinese use it. So that means in our field, in my field, for example, in supply chain management, there are 4 journals which are unacceptable, unequivocally the top 4 journals: Management Science, Journal of Operations Management, Production Operations Management, and MSOM, the manufacturing. And the Chinese have the same 4 as their goal. My Chinese colleagues in the business school have the same 4 journals as their goal. And many of their faculty members, of course, like all of us, struggle, and even America, we struggle to get it published in the best journals. But whatever it is, it takes leadership. Enforcing high standards naturally is going to be quite. It's not easy to implement such a drastic policy, but slowly you got to bring the faculty along and reward them. One of my most recent doctoral student just joined IIM Udaipur, and we just got a paper published in Production and Operations Management Journal. And he said IIM Udaipur is actually giving them mandatory reward every time you publish in the best journals. And that's the kind of approach we need to take. So instead of making it an unpleasant thing, we give them carrots instead of sticks, give them rewards, reward them for world-class excellence. And that way, no doubt, I do see the point Professor Vipin Shankar made. Why do we keep the West as the standard, etc.? We have to. The thing is, we need to play this double game. We need to be up there along with the West to show them that we are as good as them, that sort of thing. At the same time, we need to protect and build on our heritage also. Only then we'll have the credibility. So that's exactly what the Chinese are doing. Down the line, Chinese are going to set the standards. Right now, they're playing the imitation game. They're publishing in the best journals which are accepted in America and so on. but down the line, they're going to set the world standards. In fact, they have very clear metrics. The number of patents registered by universities, that's a mark of innovation, and very clear metrics, the journal rankings, the number of journal published. We must have very clear, simple goals, and then it'll automatically come. Our people are very resilient. We are not wanting in intelligence at all. And as you said, we have this big English literacy advantage over China. We should be able to do much, much better. It's just a matter of simplifying our administrative machinery and making it the standard. Then we'll go to the next level.
Yes, just to take this conversation forward, and any one of you can respond. What teachers in India, typically feel is that I am a good teacher and I teach well in class, and therefore, because of my good teaching, students get employed. So why are you forcing me to even publish? Let me remain as a good teacher. There could be someone as a good researcher. So this has been the argument, I think, in all Indian universities all across, where university administrators find it extremely difficult. On the other side, you see, when you look at, the research publications from US faculty, I haven't really gone through research publications of Chinese faculty, but when I go through research publications of faculty from the US, whether of Indian origin or otherwise, you see that, research is done on, societal problems that are really, there are dime a dozen in India, but the mindset of looking at a problem, looking at a solution and publishing it, I think that is the missing link. So maybe Dr. Gupta, you or Dr. Suresh, anybody could just respond. Yeah. How do you bring our young faculty to, tell them that, you can even bring in research into your classrooms and improvise your teaching, probably better than what you're doing today.
Yeah, I'll take a shot with your mind. Yeah, basically, see, as a teacher, you're disseminating knowledge. You're not actually, but as a researcher, you're producing knowledge. And I think we should inculcate that idea in the young faculty. It's not enough. Dissemination alone is not important. You must be a good knowledge producer. That's our time-honored Indian tradition. We've always been thought leaders. In fact, today we are having all kinds of debates about social issues and so on. But look back what happened in the 6th century BC, when there was great debates, when Buddhism came along, Jainism came along, and there was, if you look at the writings in the 6th century BC, today's debates sound extremely naive when you read the writings of the 6th century BC. So Indians have a long tradition of debate and discourse and producing new thoughts, producing new knowledge. And we got to tell our young faculty that teaching is a good, of course, but that's only one part of the equation, dissemination. You're also responsible for research and producing new knowledge. That's the other half. And you got to, I think so.
Dr. Gupta, you'd like to respond?
Yeah, let me add to that. And I'll also answer in that context, Dr. Rajan Saxena's question about is East all about theology? And there are other knowledge systems that India has, like Ayurveda. And so in that context, so first, why in the East and in India, teaching is preferred and not research? Because India and the East is about experience. So the culture is experiential culture. Okay, even when we talk about the correlation with the invisible realm, whether you want to call it spirituality or divinity, essentially that's about experience. And so whether we look at Vedas, Upanishads, so Upanishads are written by different gurus based on their experience. So there are 180 Upanishads and they go by the name of the guru. And they are the experiences of that guru, right? Now, when we talk about that research is based on production of new ideas, right? And that's really a Western concept, because many historically, if you look at what happened historically, that people from the West and of course China, and they came to India, and then they learned about things, but when they learned about things, the things were connected with issues of the invisible realm. And but once you take those ideas outside, then the people in other countries, they don't connect with those invisible entities that India is talking about. and Indians are talking about. So in Upanishads, you look at different Devis and Devs and others, that all those are interconnected. That knowledge is interconnected. And therefore, people have to produce new knowledge. They have to do research. They have to do research so that they reinterpret that in the context of their work. Now, what happens is that work then seems that, wow, this is something new. And therefore, people in India use that as one of the discourse elements, and they begin kind of losing their ancient wisdom. And that's how what has happened is, over the years, we have become very confused about what things are. And therefore, there is no need for research, because research is about our wisdom that we have. If we say that our wisdom is zero base, because all that is extremely confusing and we are not interested in that, we want to learn something new, that means that we want to educate. We want to educate whatever we have learned. But essentially, that means that we are not going to progress as a nation. Because education is not going to help us progress. It's a sensible education which is the key to progress. And sensible education comes when we question and challenge our interpretations and the received interpretations of the wisdom that we have. Because if those interpretations were accurate, then we wouldn't be in the problem that we are facing today. We wouldn't go from the golden bird, where we had 80 or 90% of the world's income, to a country which has very small income, which lost all the wars and became kind of colonialized. So that meant that our interpretations somewhere went wrong. And so that's the issue in terms of theology. Actually, East is not about theology. Theology is a Western concept. And the reason why kind of East remains strong and India remains strong is because despite all these confused wisdom, people have their experiences. They don't care about wisdom. That's a matter for intellectuals. It's not a matter for the people in regular daily life. And therefore, the essence of those practices remains strong, and that keeps people strong. While all the confusing stuff is something which is stopping us from being whole. And therefore, we need to clean that up. And unless we clean this up through research, because if you look at any research about ancient wisdom, about Indian math, it's about justifying that India already had done this. It's not about showing that what we have done wrong and how we can progress Western math and modern math. We are doing it trying to catch up and justification because we feel somehow less than a whole. And by looking at the past and justifying that our ancient India had this, it's a way to justify and bring back that dignity to us. But that's a false way of bringing dignity to us.
I think you really well said this, and I think this has been inculcated right from childhood. First, believing in the experiences, whether you're, it's your family or whether it's your school or later at the university. Very rarely you would even appreciate questioning. It starts right from the family. You cannot question your parents for anything at all, but follow their paths, and it's a good value system, of course. But even then, I think the art of questioning is somewhere lost because we've been brought up like that culturally. You so very rightly said that India, probably feels, and I don't know how long we're really going to even rest on those past laurels, because we're just happy with what our past is. And, though we are looking at technological advances, our future, but it doesn't really come out of a questioning mind. And even if you look at classrooms, at least the school classrooms, even today, the good school classrooms are the ones that are not noisy. And I would believe that the good classroom should be a noisy classroom, where students get up and are provoked to question, and, teachers have different answers to probably the same question. So that doesn't really happen in Indian classrooms. I think there is a lot of learning. But let me also tell you all that things are changing here in India. Students have become pretty, what do you say? I won't say aggressive, but really kind of they built in this whole character of representation, of questioning. And you see that the faculty and student, relationship is also far different from what it was before during our times, where, out of respect, you wouldn't even ask a question. But today, it's more friendly, something to do where they learn together, work together. I would also like to emphasize what the national education policy has brought in here, which never happened in India before, is the multidisciplinariness of education. We were so limited to silos, and I think Dr. Gupta, you very rightly said that Indians always focused more on STEM disciplines, the science, mathematics, and this was again to, I think, prove intelligence. I mean, at our times when, if you had joined arts, it would, people would look down upon you to say that, how is it? I mean, if you are an intelligent girl, then you have to join science and become a doctor or engineer. But that is not today. I mean, today you see with people with 98 percentile, students also wanting to do liberal arts or arts for that matter, or commerce, because there is so much to offer now in India. So things are changing. People are making their choices. Youngsters are questioning. And I think we're moving towards something, but how do you bring that kind of questioning into actually generating new knowledge through research is a lacuna that, and I'm sure people of Indian origin, and you all have done so well abroad, you all should help us to inculcate that amongst our young faculty. One last question I would like to take is, I think there are two questions, but let me take this one. What are the challenges that you foresee for higher education institutions in short and long run, considering the ground realities of our country? So on one side, you have the national education policy. On the other side, you have so many regulators that apparently now are going to be one, and plus, the whole country, which is so complex, aspirational students, and so on. So in this whole context, what do you all, I think each one of you should answer this question. Maybe I can start with Dr. Suresh.
Okay, so when you say ground realities of this country, I'm not quite sure what they are. Perhaps it means the thing of the past when we used to have a very traditional classroom and that sort of thing. But the ground realities are changing. I just finished, I teach in Indian schools all the time. Just a month or two ago, I finished a course in IIM Trichy. And increasingly, Indian universities are looking as good as anywhere else. And the ground realities are actually changing. In fact, I taught my class on Google Classroom, and the course was on international logistics and trade. But it was the students were highly engaging, as Dr. Yeravdekar said. It was a noisy, very noisy classroom, a highly engaged classroom. We had lots of debates and so on. It's a new generation, and I'm very much in touch with. I teach in India all the time, and so the ground realities. I don't think there is no India's. The old paradigm that we have, when I used to work in Bharat Heavy Electricals, long time when I finished my engineering, some people used to say that won't work under Indian conditions. So we used to call him Mr. Indian under Indian condition. There's no such thing. India has become Indian conditions have become very American now, and American or global now. And so there's nothing that can't work in India. I think there's nothing that cannot work in India. In fact, Indians take it to the next level. In fact, these IIM Trichy, the way they administered the course was a revelation to me. It was even better than some of the way we do it in US universities. The whole thing was done in Google Classroom and so on. And so the new under Indian conditions is, it's now, the Indian conditions are really world class now. And I think, that's my reaction.
Thank you. Dr. Gupta?
Higher education, if you look at what are the primary goal of higher education, what's the challenge of higher education internationally, it's really about social justice. And it's about kind of equipping everybody with the skills and abilities and values that allow them to kind of have a successful life for themselves, enjoyable life. But what has happened is that higher education internationally has also been correlated with very rapid polarization of wealth. And in the last 20-25 years, when higher education has grown, now about 10 or 15% of people own 80% of world's wealth. And in India, the ground reality is that the people who are at the lower strata, it's superficiality that they have more resources in terms of TV and other things, but they are facing huge challenges in terms of day-to-day life, in terms of food, in terms of a lot of things. And and I see that kind of because I'm connected with India in different ways, and I see that kind of in many, many ways. And that's the biggest challenge, that how do we redefine what we are teaching? Because if we are just borrowing from the West, then we reproduce that polarization, and we are seeing that in India. That about 5 or 10% of people own 80 or 90% of India's wealth. India is the most polarized nation now. It has become one of the most polarized nation. So, and I tell this story to everybody that if you wanted to be rich, you be in India during the pandemic, and the rich people in pandemic would say that every year should be pandemic because that's the best way for everybody to go to online and digital, for everybody else to die, and for us to become most popular because we have those assets. So their stock market appreciation, their wealth has increased the most, while everybody else is saying that we are struggling, we are struggling, we are struggling. So that means that what we are teaching in higher education, that has to take that discredit for the world that we are living in right now, because we teach students on how to appropriate more wealth by marketing products which take more money from the poor people, which pay them less to kind of give more money to international rich people. So we are teaching them all that. So it's not about universalization of higher education, because universalization of higher education is going to make poor people poorer unless there's a research element which is strongly built in, which reforms and transforms what we are teaching.
I think very well said, Dr. Gupta. And I think the role of universities here is very, very critical, very, very important, because it is the way you build these characters and personalities of these young men and women who join our universities. They're with us in their nascent years when they can really be molded. At the age of 17 plus that they come to us, they're with us for 3 years, for 5 years, at times for 6 years. And I think there is so much that we can really do through the right education and the right perspective of society that we can impart to them. And I believe that the more we connect our young students to societal needs, the picture is certainly going to change, Dr. Gupta, and will not remain the way, we envision it today. This whole polarization will also change, because unless and until you inculcate this sensitivity or towards society, and I think universities should bring in some kind of community work in their academic curriculum. And no matter which university, which college, whether it's rural or urban India, wherever these students are, because you don't know where they will go and work. And this whole sensitivity element should always remain in their character, so that they can continue to earn money for themselves, their families, and the country, but they cannot really not look at the ones that really need the resources which they can provide with. I'll just end by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, who was with us at our Golden Jubilee celebrations just last Sunday, and he gave us a wonderful message. He said, if universities, and he of course addressed symbiosis, but I would say that this is applicable to all universities in India. If universities can really pick up a theme which the country requires, it could be climate change, it could be he said the border villages around the borders of India, and so on. I mean, pick up any theme that is very important for the society that you live in, and if that can be the theme where all students, all faculty members, no matter which discipline that they work in, they can work on this theme and align it with the national agenda. Just imagine 1,000 universities and 51,000 colleges, so much of wealth that we have of youngsters, so much can be offered to our country to uplift, the divide that is there. And, as you very rightly said, Dr. Gupta, that India is a country where this kind of divide is so significant. And if we can help this divide, to gain some kind of balance, if not at an equilibrium, but some kind of balance, I'm sure this will be one of the greatest contributions in this world of disarray, as we believe, and higher education in 2030 will really be much, much more meaningful than what it is today. I once again thank both of you, and I really hope that you don't limit your contributions just to the IIMs, but also contribute to the larger, business environment or the business schools in our country. In fact, there are others that need you more than what the IIMs need you, but most certainly we will like to invite you to all our institutions. And I'm sure IMA is doing wonderful jobs of getting such people, in the forefront to interact with Indian academia. So thank you, IMA, for inviting me to chair this wonderful session, and let us remain connected. Thank you.
Thank you.